So I wanna start off with something light, but also something that's near and dear to my heart, which is Filipino food. So the role of food in both of your poems. For example, Barbara, your poem Brown Girl Consumed, right off the bat, it links Filipinx identity and treatment through the lens of our food. And I'd love to hear more, Paula, about your thoughts behind writing the Halo Halo remix of Lucy. I don't think I'll eat or think of Halo Halo the same after that poem.
The Halo Halo remix seemed a fitting name for that particular poem because it has just everything sort of tossed in there, and all these sort of at least to me when I was writing it, very improbable sort of syntax and images tossed into a you know, if we were going to keep this metaphor going, tossed into a large sundae glass. But my relationship to food has been very strange. I think that I had, you know, what may be like a sort of a typical immigrant experience where there was like a period of shame, like when you're in middle school, you know, about, you know, what your classmates thought was like stinky food. And so I really feel sort of I don't know, moved by Barbara's poem. And but yeah, the Halo Halo remix felt fitting for that poem, but I wanted to sort of pass it on to Barbara.
And I should just say, for those of you who are unfamiliar with what Halo Halo is, it's a Filipino dessert, which is ice and sort of like, I guess there's gummy sort of snacks within it.
There's everything.
There's everything.
Like, everything delicious and good. It's like all, like you get like a little like kernel of, you know, all sorts of goodness, all packed with like shaved ice and sweetened condensed milk, and maybe a scoop of ube ice cream, and now I'm getting hungry. So
Halo Halo is wonderful because it is like every texture ever, right? I was just thinking, you said the gummy, right? And I referenced the gummy bears. So there's that chewy coconut, and then there's the crunchy stuff on top, and then there's the cold, you know, from the ice, and then like if you've ever had that with like a piece of leche flan on top, it's like, oh my God, now I'm really hungry too. Yeah, do you remember that Bon Appetit article from a few years ago that was like remaking the Halo Halo? And because you can't get a lot of these ingredients in, well, in this country, unless you go to a specialty Asian grocery, what do you do to substitute? Right? So I see where like, okay, you know, to accomplish that gummy texture, what do we have? We have gummy bears. And then if you don't have, I don't know, jackfruit, you can put muddled blackberries in it. And, you know, so at the end of it all, it was like, okay, wait, now there's popcorn on top. And then what is this? You know, so it was very, very interesting. And some folks, you know, when we were all writing about it and saying this is a really interesting and kind of, you know, interesting attempt at Halo Halo. It's kind of an abomination, and I would never do that. And other people were lecturing me and finger wagging at me and saying, you should be grateful.
Great. Yeah.
We're in Bon Appetit. You should be grateful. It was polarizing. I'm seeing in the chat.
Yeah.
But
how can you replace lamb with muddled blackberries? That's just like, that's absurd. Like,
it depends on what's in season, I guess. But for me too, right? Like, so with all of these things about like how food trucks and, you know, all of these kind of hip restaurants are coming out, right? With you know, okay, now Filipino food is on the Food Network, or it's on Andrew Zimmern's show. And it got me thinking about like, well, we can objectify it and we can commercialize it, and of course it's there, but then I always kind of go back to these memories of sitting at tables with old ladies and just pulling all the leaves off of, you know, like snapping the ends off beans and whatever. And, you know, that became kind of the place where I learned everybody's chisme, right? Reminds me of, you know, the places where they would just tell you the kinds of stories that they would never repeat in front of mixed company. So for me, that's kind of where my where I go with my relationship with food. you know, I keep bringing it back to, you know, who was growing our food, and you know, what was my experience with these folks, and them telling me their stories and about their lives and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I like how you put that. It's such a communal experience. We can't talk about the food without talking about the community. And I also like both of your descriptions of Halo Halo is a very visceral experience, and this sort of experiment of excess, I think, now that it's become that. I do want to dig into a little bit the title of tonight's reading, which is Filipina Poetics. I'm sure people are gonna ask what is Filipino poetics, what makes it distinct. So I don't want to fall into the trap of essentializing, you know, what makes it different from other poetics, right? But I think maybe a generative entry into tonight's theme could be a question about both of your relationships to audience in your poems. So clearly Letters to a Young Brown Girl would seem obvious in terms of its intended audience. But the collection also seems to engage with just a number of different yous also. And then I can't help but think, Paula, and I could be wrong, but your use of you sometimes too, there's a distance that you place. And I see a sort of distance working into Barbara's work as well. But can you both talk about who you envisioned to be your readers and the sort of engagement you wanted to cultivate with that audience? I think she's gesturing to you, Paula.
So Paula and I are being those cartoon characters. After you. No, after you. You know, one of the things that I first started doing when I realized I was writing these poems was that I reached out to the community via social media, because that's really the only place I'm consistently seeing a lot of community, and just put out a question, which was, what are your questions for me? You know, and I don't really remember exactly what prompted me to ask them what they wanted to ask me. But all these Filipinas from, you know, different ages and different parts of the country started leaving me these comments, and you know, sending me emails that a lot of them did verge on confessional, that there were things in their lives and in, you know, some of their very kind of complicated and difficult family relationships that they felt like they needed to get off their chests, and they needed to, I don't know, somehow confide that in me, right, about their mothers and their mothers' husbands and their own boyfriends and ethnicity and alienness and foreignness. And so when I started writing back to them, that's when the poetry happened, right? You know, I'm certainly in no position to tell somebody how to live their life or what to do with their complicated family dynamics. But it dawned on me that folks were coming at me and calling me ate, right? Somebody in the chat also called me ate, and you know, it was like I am an elder sister to them, and so what it is that I have to say to them is something that matters. So that's a lot of where these poems came from, right? And so that's kind of the first answer to who you is just literally a lot of other Filipino women who have confided a lot of things about their family lives and their private lives to me. You know, and they're really, you know, I can't say that any of them are I mean, they're a very, very diverse bunch of people, you know, and for the last 3 collections of poetry, I've been doing that kind of crowdsourcing a lot, and just hearing just anybody's take on any one thing. You throw the word feminism into the mix and we have 100 different ideas of what that means. So, you know, again, I think that Stephanie, it's good that you preface this with, let's not make a monolith out of what Filipina poetics is. But I feel like there's just, you know, everybody has a divergent kind of idea and experience of being a Filipina in this country, or as an immigrant, or, you know, as a non-binary person, or as a, you know, somebody married, somebody in academia. Right.
Yeah, I think that you know, sorry, checking to see if I'm on mute. That my relationship to audience is, I don't know, it's kind of strange, because I remember sort of starting off as a poet. So I'll it's a roundabout way of, you know, of answering who the audience is for Play for Time. because before this book happened, and when I was sort of this young poet coming up in workshops and classes, I was always encouraged to universalize, and always sort of told that, whatever your poetry is, make sure that you universalize it. And it took me quite a long time before I realized that the sort of imperative to universalize, really underneath that was this idea that universalize for a white audience, like universalize for a white reader, right? So don't be too specific, don't be too anything. And, like too, if this is a sort of, a particular sort of like female experience, make it, a universal experience. So, so I think what Play for Time, became was in part like a response, and maybe perhaps like a bratty response to that direction, or that imperative to universalize. It's like, no, I'm gonna just indulge in all the excesses that I've been told to sort of trim back and edit out, and I will indulge in all these sort of syntactic weirdnesses that I have always been very fond of, and I think that my experience sort of as an immigrant is part of my own relationship or fascination with just how weird language is. Like when you first arrive, like when I first arrived in Canada, being called by my cousins who had sort of grown up there, like fob, and sort of like and recognizing just like, oh, okay, well, whatever accent this is, it isn't the accent that's like appropriate, right? And so, yeah, I don't know, maybe that's a sort of a scattered answer, but I think in terms of your question, Steph, and who my audience is, I think my audience is just other weirdos like me who really dig weird language things, and sort of ignoring that call to universalize for like this larger, this imaginary larger audience, which is really just this code for a white audience. Yeah.
Right, thank you. No, I think that answered. I think both of you are kind of saying there's something. I feel like you were saying there's something for everyone in this poetry, and then also particularly for I think Filipinos as well, without having to erase us in getting swallowed in that universality, right? So I love that. I'm just gonna. I think I have time for maybe one more question here. It's a bit heavy because I do want to bounce off of Snowball what you're talking about, Paula, in terms of there are particular experiences though here to speak to. And what I want to talk about is the colonized experience and its social, economic, and cultural forms and effects today is a prominent theme in both of your collections. So Letters addresses this head on, and it sort of faces it head on. And Paula, as we heard in Left by the Ship and Halfway, it seems to be represented through borders of identity, countries, generations, languages. There's clearly a colonial history that leaves a large imprint on parts of the Filipinx, Filipino-Filipina identity. So how does your poetry process or work through the effects of colonialism? And do you argue some resolution here?
Yeah, right. That's hard. I feel like you can keep kind of peeling back all of these layers, right? All of these different pieces of evidence that come from our colonial legacies, and then kind of go, well, what's left of me, right? There's, I've become very mindful too that when, and I see this a lot in folks who are trying very hard to decolonize and then not kind of understanding that now they're walking into the kind of territory where, now you're just appropriating an indigenous experience that is not yours either. So for me, I always kind of feel like I'm in this nowhere place you know, or, you know, and sometimes it sounds like, well, that's really very, you know, that sounds very hopeless, but I also kind of feel like, you know, that's kind of an optimal place to be, just kind of liminal, right? And kind of, you know, in a place where you can just examine all of those pieces critically. So I don't know about resolution as much as this is always going to be a process of examining these pieces critically and being mindful when I do use them, right?
Yeah, there's, man, if I could find a resolution, if there was some way my brain could think ourselves, you know, think us into some workable solution at just how to, you know, not just decolonize what is around us, but decolonize our own internalized, you know, yeah, our internalized colonial subject, right? I think I'm somebody who learned about Canadian history and then Texas history and American history first before I learned Filipino history. And I'm someone who, you know, me and my brothers, both my parents insisted when we were living in the Philippines and later when we were living in the Middle East, like they insisted on English. That, you know, you know, they insisted on us, you know, being fluent in English because to them, you know, that is your path to success, your path, you know, like assimilation was never a dirty word, right? Growing up, and yeah, so I think the tensions and the sort of what I'm working through in terms of just colonization and being a colonial subject is myself, like trying to come to terms with how, you know, with everything I love, because the truth of the matter is I fell in love with like Keats first, you know, and with Plath first, and all my poets were no, actually Cummings was my first love. So you know, all my poets did not look like me, and so I think it wasn't until later that I even sort of allowed myself to feel entirely comfortable with you know, with owning and writing about my experience, and you know, and not and sort of ignoring other sort of academic voices who suggest that to write about a specific Filipino or a specific immigrant experience is to ghettoize my poetry. You know, it's one of those things. It's just like it's weird. If you've come up through academia, and if you come up through whatever like poetry channels, there's a lot of this weird tacit pressure to assume a kind of you know, neutral ethnicity, if that makes sense. So yeah, no resolution, but just a lot of grappling and a lot of dealing with this weird kind of residual guilt as well for everything that I have sort of internalized and working to unlearn.
Well, I'm a little disappointed you didn't solve colonial mentality in this half hour that we had. But no, it sounds like poetry has been a way of processing a lot of this. And I think for me too, reading both of your works has been healing in that way. Okay, we're gonna throw it over to the audience now for question and answer. So Therese, I'll throw it to you.
Thank you both, Barbara Jane and Paula. I had chills throughout the reading, honestly, even from the beginning of this event. And so, you know, I really appreciate your voice and your energy and your writing. So we have a couple of questions set for you both. For the audience, please feel free to continue typing your questions in the chat. But the first question that we do have for the both of you is, which was the hardest poem to write, or which poem was the easiest?
For me, the closing poem in this book, I think, was the hardest. It is, a Dear Brown Girl letter, and it is literally 100 sentences. And this one was hard because I felt like, they say don't wrap it up neatly and put a ribbon on it and curl the ends of that ribbon and, leave some loose ends. But I felt like, no, I need to really just wrap this one up. But there were a lot of concepts here, Filipino core values like PAWA, right, or shared identity, and loob, or, which is a word that means inside, but like your inner, I guess, life. And really kind of drive those things home and talk about how, as the foreign brown kid with the stinky lunch, in the suburbs, surrounded by people who just made fun, and having internalized all of that shame, how do you now, as a grown-up, like recast all of that and understand? So I felt like I gave myself this very, very hard task. To kind of try to put it all in context. How many decades of this American life, and how many things that in hindsight, since my father's passing 5 years ago, I've been able to kind of have a better understanding of, how he lived his American life and the places that he pushed back and resisted against kind of conforming and becoming this perfect little suburban family devoid of any of our, kind of true selves, I guess. So yeah, that was the hardest one.
I think, well, the years spanning the poems in my book are, I think maybe the four that, I've got like poems here that are maybe like 8, 9 years old. So it's weird for me to think of just what effort went into them. Because there are poems also that I return to years after the fact and just keep fucking with until I'm like, okay, fine, that works. But I think Halfway is one of those poems. It's not the most difficult, it's actually the easiest poem to write. So I'm going to answer the easy part of that question. But Halfway was a poem that had very little sort of changes or edits. It's something that just sort of that I don't know. I felt almost as if I was channeling it when I wrote that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how revealing that answer or how useful it is, but I think Halfway was probably at least one poem in this book that I didn't mess with as much as the others.
No, thank you for that. And it's very interesting to also hear about your creative process, and also, the difficulty, I think, with processing and even maybe going through those emotions that have inspired you and driven you to write those poems. So thank you. Our next question is, what are your thoughts about today's heavy emphasis on activism over process, meaning the weaponization of the creative process in order to address power dynamics?
I think like if we could weaponize poetry, we would be living in a much better world. I think I don't know. I've again with the sort of imperative to universalize that I received. Another one was this sort of anxiety around being too political in one's work, and sort of like craft above all else. And I don't think that there's as great a risk of that. And I'm also I feel sort of suspicious sometimes of the cry for or like I feel suspicious of that binary, that of like somehow activism and art cannot sort of coexist, right? Or I don't know, maybe I'm misinterpreting the question, or maybe I'm like being way too too in my feelings about it. I don't know, what do you think, Barbara?
Yeah, right. My first response is that I don't feel as though those two things, activism and creative process, should be kind of two opposing forces. I think that speaking for my own ways of working, that you can do both. You really can do both. You can very, very kind of thoughtfully and critically and creatively put things down on paper, and look at a thing and take a step back and look at it again and you know, edit the thing to death, revise it if you have to. And not because you're trying to like bleed all the color out of it or make it acceptable for, you know, this kind of, you know, this academy that'll only really kind of accept you if you write and sound a certain way. If anything, I feel as though a lot of the creative process that I go through will really get at those real kind of jagged and angry pieces a lot more like effectively, because now I have to sit with, what is this anger? What are the specific things that I am trying to communicate you know, anger about, and what is, you know, what does this anger look like, sound like, what is the texture of it? Sometimes some of the most effective anger isn't the stuff that I am shouting as much as it is the stuff that I am very kind of quietly and with, you know, kind of sadness and, you know, a more quiet emotion kind of, you know, just speaking, as opposed to kind of just yelling a thing, which isn't to say that you can't have good, effective, angry yelling poems either, you know. So I don't feel like those two things are opposites. Yeah.
And I wanted to say too, just like the, I don't know, it just reminds me of like my parents, or, you know, someone's like, my mom's really angry, like when it's not loud anymore, it's quiet. Anyway, sorry. That's
that's the most kind of
like,
scary,
I think
right? Yeah.
The quieter anger is the scarier anger.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, I'm with that.
Yeah, I think both of you touched upon really, really good points in that. I think, you know, activism can look different in so many different ways, especially with the creative writing process. But I feel, I don't know, it's interesting. I've never really thought about the idea of quiet anger, you know, and how you can sort of re-envision what that looks like and how to channel that, you know, through writing. So I think those are very, very good points. Our next question is, how do you want future Filipina/Pinay poetics and other writing to develop?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think that's in my hands. I think it's, you know, whoever comes to the page and whatever is important to them and whatever they bring with them. You know, that's, many of those people are going to shape what Pinay poetics looks like, you know. So I can't say I want it to be more political, but only by my definition of political, or I want it to be crafted a certain way by my definition of what is well crafted. I think that for me, what it means to be a good teacher and a good mentor is to let it go and to step back and just let the kids play, you know, and just do whatever, you know, whatever, you know, you need to say, and however it is you need to say it, is how it should go. You know, and as for myself, I'll be writing as a Filipina at age 50 and then a Filipina at age 60, and that'll be an entirely different kind of voice that you hear there, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that my hope is, I certainly don't feel like I have any sort of power to shape anything, you know, beyond my own voice. And my power with my students is only helping them sort of see where they, you know, where they want to go and what their vision is. But as regards, you know, Pinay poetics, I just want to see more, you know, just to have, you know, just poetry from like Filipino writers sort of be everywhere, like yes, in academia, but also like in slams and in just in every sort of avenue and platform, just massive proliferation. Let's just, let's conquer. No, not conquer. I don't want to use the colonizer's language, but yeah, not shape, but expand.
Yeah, and I guess, I think this next question leads perfectly, I think, to this idea that, while I think we all have our own agency in terms of writing, in your opinion, for each of you, which underrated Pinay/Filipino writer of any genre do you recommend young brown girls to read immediately? Maybe ones that have affected you, impacted you, and influenced the way that you've written.
Catalina Carriaga wrote one book called Cultural Evidence that came out in either 1999 or 2000. And she does this thing with the page and white space. And, I don't know what else to say about her except that she is bomb, and she is like taught me everything about how to use the page more effectively as not just the thing that you're putting your words on, but as how you are also shaping your quote unquote message. So yeah, Catalina Carriaga. See, okay, you know what? Let me type it into the chat, but it's oh my gosh, let's see. There you go.
Oh, it looks like Willy. Awesome. Okay.
Oh, did you already?
Willy posted the link to her book. Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you, Willy. Oh my goodness. Okay, that was fast. Cultural Evidence, yes. Mm-hmm.
Nice. I'm woefully underread as regards to Filipino poets. I know a few male Filipino poets. I love Patrick Rosal and Joseph Legaspi, but I'll be definitely checking out Carolina Carriaga. So thanks for that.
Cool. Yeah, no, thank you for those recommendations. And I think it's really interesting. I mean, especially for me, like to be able to have someone in mind to think about even influencing writing is really important. So thank you. We do have time still for a couple of questions. There's one question, and this is for Barbara Jane. So, do writing your poems physically and psychologically affect you to the point where maybe of near sickness or madness? Do you write them without involving yourself that intensely?
I mean, I write till I have to put it down, right? And I think part of the process is learning how to take care of yourself. I do not subscribe to, that in order to be a great artist, you have to engage in self-destruction physically or psychologically. So if I need to walk away, I will walk away from a thing. My last book, I wrote about a lot of murdered Filipinas, and yeah, I had to put that down a lot and take care of myself. I'm still a human being with a family, so the answer would be no. I am not going to drive myself to madness this way. I think I care. I care about the quality of my life and the life of my family. So yeah, I would never put them through that. Thank you though for asking.
Thank you for your vulnerable response. I think it's, I find it very interesting just to learn more about the process of what it's like to be in your, perspective of writing and experiencing this. So thank you. Okay, our next question is, was there a topic that you both feel like you didn't get to address but wanted to?
In our book, or just like in this event, or?
I think either both.
Okay. No, I don't think so. Like, I think, you know, in my book, I was exploring issues of narrativity and time and just sort of these structures of narrative organization. So I had a very sort of clear idea of how I was putting it together, you know, and also like anything I you know, that I didn't include there is always going to be the idea for the next project. So yeah, I think that's kind of exciting. Like I don't think I feel like that I was missing anything, because the next thing is always the next project. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I totally agree with that, Paula, right? Like whatever comes up next, you are going to write another book, and you're going to write another book after that. So, you know, for myself, I kind of give myself like this is the book, this is the complete project. And I'm going to write this thing until it is complete. And there are things that start to go, oh, wait, what about that? There's a tangent, there's a branch, there's a something going that way. Is that necessary for this? Or do I start already outlining what is going to happen in the next book? You know, and so you know, I'm very, just in my personal life or just in general, very good at drawing boundaries, right? So I'm saying, this is the book, and these are the boundaries, and anything that is not exactly falling into that, let's go ahead and start collecting them over there. So I think that, yeah, just as a piece of advice for younger writers, you will write another book. So fear not, it will, you know, if you keep having an idea, if you keep having ideas, you are going to keep writing books. And this is reassuring then, I hope. Right?
Yeah, and we just a follow-up to that question in regards to books. What book are you most excited to teach in your Pinay Lit class?
You know what? Monica Ong has a book called Silent Anatomies, and I'm reading with her in 5 days at Eastwind Books of Berkeley. But she is a visual artist, a visual poet, and so many of her poems are actual art projects. And I love teaching so-called experimental literature to my undergrads, because there is a lot there for them to mine and think about meaning and think about, why would a poet do this? Put a poem about, you know, giving birth to the tradition of daughters meaning less than sons. Why would she put that on an image of an ultrasound of a baby? And now we're having a conversation, right, about, you know, gender and the body, and you know, what it is that is expected of us as women of childbearing age, especially in traditional families, you know, etc. So Monica Ong, definitely. I love her book. She's so good.
Thank you. And we have Willy who noted down the link. So thank you, Willy. And so this is our last question. If there are no other questions left from the audience, please feel free to keep typing in any of your questions. But do you have any thoughts to share about the unprecedented levels of grief being experienced by the community in this current state of the country, and how to process as fellow film artists and writers?
I've actually heard it from different places, but the suggestion that we should have a national day of mourning, because things have happened so fast, and I feel like, and I'm talking it, you know, in the States, right, where we're at right now, but also just in the Philippines. And yeah, I just think that I don't know. Any thoughts to share? I would love if there was just some massive organizational push towards, or like among artists, to have like a day of mourning where we just sort of, I don't know, yeah, just be sad and maybe like just weep for several hours and then take a nap and then maybe eat. I don't know. Like, it's I don't have, like, my thoughts are that we are all still so in it, and we are all still so sad and so angry, and some of us don't have time to actually stop. So I wish we could all just stop and just, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with that. I have been thinking a lot about well, grief, right? Whether we're experiencing our own personal grief or this larger grief, this like communal grief. You know, a lot of people had told me, I took like weeks and weeks off of work, and they told me, hey, what are you going to do with your time off? You should write a book. We are living in unprecedented times. And I thought about it, and I did try to bang out a book. I wrote about like 3/4 of a really crappy draft. And then I put it away and I was like, what am I doing? I need to rest. I need to take care of myself. I need to grieve, right? I need to check in with the people that I love and that love me. So sometimes being an artist isn't just that you are constantly creating. Sometimes it is that you step back and allow yourself to process. So I think that, you know, if we could allow ourselves to have that kind of time and space to do that, I think that that would be just so great, you know, because we are still being pushed to be productive. I mean, this is capitalism, right? As a laborer, you are still supposed to be productive under like these totally impossible circumstances. Your output still needs to be a certain, you know, and it's like, no. How about we decolonize that, right? If there is something that is worth decolonizing right here and right now, it would be that. Just step back and don't measure yourself by your output. You know, don't measure your worth by your output, and just really kind of just be, right? Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much both for saying that. I really needed to hear those words. And you know, I also just appreciate the vulnerability that you both shared. I know we are living in a very difficult time, and I think to be able to hear from you both and just know that it's okay to step back, right? And that we can reimagine the ways that we can value our worth and, you know, separate ourselves from, I think, the mentality that has always been fed to us in the society. And so, you know, just want to echo a lot of the sentiment that we've been seeing according to the group chat, just being in this space with you all. We do have one more question, and we do have time for just one last one. And so, how does one reconcile or put together these different cultures in poetry? For instance, how does it seem as a Filipino in the US or any other country writing poetry without letting one outweigh the other in influence over what you create?
I feel like, yeah, that's for me, I feel as though like those kinds of questions, when they come up, I'm wondering what is informing the question. Do you feel as though you are betraying your Filipino-ness by, you know, taking a path that is more kind of quote unquote conventional? Or do you feel as though you are not going to be read by, you know, kind of literary establishment if you stray away from these more kind of Western, you know, values, or that kind of, as Paula had said, that kind of neutral whiteness, right? For myself, I kind of feel like, you know, if you are writing about what is most important to you, then all of the cultural aspects will flesh themselves out in your work. I know I've tried many times to, especially in previous books, to you know, insert as much Tagalog language as I could into the thing because it felt like I needed to represent. And then I ended up editing out. And the reason why was because at every single poetry reading I did, when I would have to read a poem that was in this really heavy and fluid and beautiful Tagalog, I would stumble and stumble and stumble and stumble over it. And you know what? The tongue did not want that. The tongue cannot handle that. So either I become a better Tagalog speaker or very fast, or I just have to translate this into English and handle what I can, right? So I think that, you know, sometimes it is just what are the limitations of what are the limitations of your, what is your body telling you you can and cannot do? And of course you can exercise that and expand upon that. But
yeah, I mean, I think like, you know, there's a certain anxiety, you know, I'm hearing certain anxiety underlying that question, as if any one poem or any one book is supposed to have the perfect ratio of, you know, Western culture and Filipino culture and whatever, you know, ethnicity in there. And I think that if you sort of put that sort of ideological cart before the horse, you're never going to have a book, you know. Like, I think you really, you know, just I'm just echoing what Barbara is saying by sort of urging whoever asked that question, that, you know, what is the thought or the experience that you want to put into language and that you want to share with everybody else around you, right? Like, which experience do you want to honor, and then you write it, because language is almost absurdly capacious. It will fit, and it will, and you also don't have to fit everything in there, you know. And yeah, like, you don't need to be like bako mata, right? Like, you just, you know, that was something that I did feel some initial kind of earlier on in my writings, you know, some anxiety about, like, well, maybe I need to have like some sort of balance of these, and now my primary concern really is just a balance in the language, in the proportion itself, not necessarily the subjects or the themes.